All right, what we're working with today is linear functions and intercepts. We're going to start graphing linear functions using slope-intercept form and intercepts. Today, we're just focusing on intercepts. So the first thing we need to know is we need to know some of the vocabulary. And so a linear equation is just a line. And the parent graph is y equals x. We will not do many transformations of the parent graph for linear functions, but we will do it when we get to other functions. So with linear functions, there's no exponents. And linear functions are lines. Okay, they can be slanted lines, horizontal lines, or even vertical lines. But there's no curves and there's going to be straight lines. Standard form, there's different forms you have to be able to recognize. Standard form is just ax plus by equals c, where there are no fractions or decimals. Sometimes we'll have decimals, but we prefer not to have decimals. So I'm going to kind of cross that off because that's only for sometimes. When we're dealing with problems like money and things like that, then we might have decimals. But with our basic problems right now, we're not going to have decimals. The other thing is that a cannot be negative. And so some examples are going to be 2y equals 5 minus 3x. Okay, let me give ourselves some space. And so what happens here is my x is on the wrong side because it has to be x, then y, then equals, and this is just a number. Okay, and so I need to get this 3x over here, so I add 3x. 3x and 2y cannot go together, so I put it up front. And so I get 3x. This is a positive 2y equals 5. And so that's standard form. If you have something that has a fraction, like x over 5 equals 2 minus plus y, well, the first thing I need to do is I need to get my y on the other side, or you can get rid of the fraction either way, but I'm going to get the y over here. So I'm going to get x over 5 minus y. Because this is a plus y, I'll minus y on both sides, equals 2. And now I have to get rid of my fractions. So to get rid of my divide by 5, I multiply everything by 5. And so I get x minus 5y equals 10. And this is standard form. Last example, if I have something like 2x or 2y minus 3x equals 8, all that I have to do here is I have to move this to the front. When I move it to the front, that's a positive 2y. But my issue is that I have a negative up here, and you can't have a negative. So what I need to do is I need to divide by negative 1 everything, which really all that does is it changes the signs to a negative 2y and a negative 8. So now I'm at standard form. Okay, so we'll work some with standard form, but you will have some problems that all you have to do is get it in standard form. So that's how you do those. All right, the next things we have is the y-intercept and x-intercept, or not those, but the horizontal and vertical lines. So a horizontal line is a y equals equation. So if I have y equals 7, I go to where y is 7, and I make a dot. And what that means is it doesn't matter what my x is, my y is always 7. And so since my y is always 7, it's the same height all the way around, so it is a horizontal line. Vertical lines are x equals equations. Change color so you can see what's going on. And so for this one, if I have x equals negative 3, I go to negative 3, and any point I have, it's over 3, negative 3. So it's a vertical line. It's supposed to be straight, but my dots are a little crooked, but that's okay. All right, why don't you come down here, look at these examples and see if you can do these three. When you think you have them, press pause and you can check your work. Okay, so for number 1, x is 5 is right here, and x is always 5, so it's a vertical line. For number 2, y is -3, and it's always -3, so it's a horizontal line. And for number 3, x is -1, and so anywhere I go, it's -1, and so it's a vertical line. Ooh, I missed that one. Okay, let's look at the next type. The last type of problem we have is when we have to graph things based on their intercepts, the x-intercept and the y-intercept. And so what we're doing is when you graph and the line crosses the x-axis, that's called the x-intercept. So it's when it intersects the x-axis. Remember, x-axis is the left to right axis. To find that, because you wouldn't go up or down any, you plug 0 in for y. So if I want to find the x-axis, the x-intercept for something, I'm going to plug in 0 for y. For the y-intercept, it's also where it crosses. This time it's where it crosses the y-axis. And this time you plug in 0 for x, because you don't want the x. And there's a little trick that I learned a while ago, and it makes people really kind of remember it. Let's say I have this problem, -2x plus y equals -4. So if I want to find the x-intercept and the y-intercept, what I do is I physically take my finger. If I had a finger that I could put over here, but let's see. I could put a box. For the x-intercept, I'm going to physically cover up the y. Let's see if I can get that to fill in. So what I do is I purposely cover up the y, and so my equation is -2x equals -4. I divide by -2, so I find that x is +2. Well, all I care about is the x. I didn't want the y, so that's 0. So x is 2. Where's my mouse? There it is, right there. Now, to find the y-intercept, I'm going to do the same thing. Let's get rid of this box if I can click on it. So now what I'm going to do with the next one is I'm going to physically cover up my x. And when I physically cover up my x, I'm left with y equals -4. So that tells me that's the y coordinate at -4, and I didn't want the x, so it's 0. And so by physically, I missed. So by physically covering them up, then that helps me graph the points, and then I just have to connect my dots. So again, to find the x-intercept, you're going to cover up the y. To find the y-intercept, you're going to cover up the x. So what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to try numbers 4 and 5, and then when you think you have them, press play so you can check your answers. Okay, so remember to find the x-intercept. I'm going to take my box and I'm going to physically cover up the y. Ooh, that box is too big. And I'm going to physically cover up the y. And so now my equation is 2x equals 10. Ooh. And so I divide by 2, so I get x is 5. So I go to the right 5. And then now to find my next one, I move my box, if I can get it to move. Okay, so now that I have the x covered up, remember for the y-intercept, where's my mouse? There it is. And so it's going to be -4y equals 10. So when I divide by -4, I get y equals -2.5. And so -2.5 is right between the 2 and the 3. And so I connect my dots. All right, so over here on the next one, number 6, I'm just going to see if I can move these boxes. Probably not. Bad luck. Okay, so I'm going to take this box and I'm going to cover up the y, and that is going to help me find my x value. 3x equals -12. Divide by 3, and I get -4, so I go to -4. And then I'm going to move it over here to the 3x, And when I cover it up now, I have negative y equals negative 12. So when I divide by negative 1, I get a negative 1, which are a positive 12. Now, positive 12 isn't up here, but I'm going to say it's right about here. And so I connect my dots. Okay, so remember, for x-intercept, you cover up the y because you don't want it. For y-intercept, you cover up the x because you don't want it. And then once you have those values, you're able to graph them.